EVO. Welcome back to The Devil Within. So, CrimeCon 2025 in the great American city of Denver, Colorado. If you don't know what CrimeCon is, it's a yearly convention for all things true crime, from films to TV to podcasts, cold case aficionados, you name it. We all descend on a particular hotel with a convention center and have a 3-day weekend of screenings and panel discussions and interviews, and it's a lot of fun. So if you're going to be in Denver, September 5th through the 7th, stop by the Let the Devil In booth and say hello. I'd love to meet you. So, in honor of CrimeCon 2025, I decided to dive into the Denver folklore and give you guys a couple of episodes about that great city in the vein of The Devil Within. Hope you enjoy. This is Chapter 1, The Brown Palace Seance. So let's begin with a question no one really wants answered. What happens to a place that never closes? A place with no last call, no lights out, no time for ghosts to settle in because no one ever actually leaves. Well, welcome to the Brown Palace Hotel. Downtown Denver, established 1892, and open every hour of every day since. And yet somehow, still haunted. Maybe the spirits got tired of waiting for everybody to leave. But now, this is the part of the story where someone usually will tell you that the hotel was built on a cemetery. It wasn't. That's Cheesman Park, and we'll get to that. The Brown Palace sits on what used to be a fairly ordinary patch of prairie land. Later bricked over with Victorian grandeur, 9 stories tall and shaped like a strange, sharp triangle. Some say it looks like a piece of cake. Others say it looks like a dagger. And you know what? Both are right. I guess it depends on what kind of night you're having. Built by a man named Henry Brown, who liked to have his name on everything he possibly could, the Brown Palace was a temple to opulence. Stained glass, wrought iron, marble floors, live harp music wafting up through the atrium. And for some reason, everyone who steps into this place feels like they're being watched. Not in the staff is attentive kind of way, in the there's a woman staring at me from the corner of the ceiling, but she's upside down and probably from 1913 kind of way. Most hotels host guests. This one keeps them. But now let's talk about the seance. So it was 1945, the war was over, rationing was fading, and Americans were rediscovering their fondness for bourbon and ballroom dancing and the sweet illusion that ghosts could be conjured. Now, the Brown Palace had long been a haven for spiritualists, occultists, and bored heiresses dabbling in the arcane. And that year, a group of socialites gathered in the Eisenhower Suite, named for the president who would one day use it as his campaign headquarters. They were there to summon the spirit of Louise Crawford Hill, Denver's original grande dame. Now, Louise had lived in the hotel for decades before her death. She was known for throwing lavish balls, terrorizing the staff with the flick of a silk fan, and writing anonymous notes to the Denver Post correcting their grammar. Her ghost, as it turns out, was no less opinionated. That night, a medium named Marjorie DeLange set up in the parlor with the usual pageantry. There were candles, there was a crystal ball, there was a dramatic scarf hung over the lamp. The women clasped their hands, the air thickened, the candles dimmed. And according to several attendees, most of whom wound up in Palm Springs, but according to most of the attendees, Louise answered. And she wasn't pleased. The chandelier above the seance table swayed. A mirror cracked. The bellhop on duty reported hearing the phonograph play without a record. And worst of all to those in attendance, the bourbon, they swear, turned to vinegar. And the seance ended abruptly when Marjorie fainted. Now, this wasn't unusual. Most mediums would do that when they realize either they're in over their heads and no one's buying their line, or they're under someone else's control. So, the hotel quietly buried the story. But the suite, it was sealed for a while, it was repainted, it was rebranded, but the lights still flicker, they say, at 11:11 p.m. The chandelier still sways when no one's around. In Louise Hill, she still corrects the grammar on the room service menus, according to the staff. I guess some things are eternal. But here's the real kicker. This wasn't the only seance in the Brown Palace's history, not even close. Every few decades, someone tries to peek through the veil in one of its rooms. Sometimes to connect with lost loved ones. Sometimes just to tempt fate. And fate, it always answers. One couple swore their newborn's name appeared in the steam on their bathroom mirror before they ever even wrote the name down. A jazz pianist claims to have played duets with someone that only he could hear. And once, a pair of paranormal investigators brought in an EMF reader and got a perfect 10 spike the second they mentioned the phrase, "the lady in room 904. Now, room 904 has since been remodeled. It's a suite, but good luck sleeping there. The thing about the Brown Palace is that its ghosts aren't just relics. They're participants. They mingle. They keep the place lively. And why wouldn't they? There's music, there's champagne, and there's no checkout time. So the next time you find yourself in downtown Denver with a few hours to kill, stop by the Brown, order a martini, sit beneath the atrium and listen to the harp. Then look up. If you're lucky, you won't see anything. But if you're very lucky, you will. Chapter 2, The Ghosts of Cheesman Park. Some parks are meant for picnics. Cheesman Park is meant for penance. It's sunny now, sure. Joggers, dogs off leash, a yoga class silently saluting the sky near a marble pavilion. But make no mistake, beneath all that peace and Pilates lies a crime scene. A mass grave, actually, and a particularly sloppy one. Here's the part no one in Denver wants to talk about, and the part I can't seem to shut up about. Cheesman Park was built on top of a cemetery. No, seriously, not near a cemetery, not next to a cemetery, on top of it, like the neighborhood in Poltergeist. This isn't a metaphor. Rewind to the mid-1800s, back when Denver was little more than a muddy mining camp with big dreams and terrible sanitation. In 1858, the city established its first official burial ground, known as Mount Prospect Cemetery, a modest name for what would eventually become a bureaucratic disaster of epic proportions. So Mount Prospect, later renamed City Cemetery, quickly devolved into a who's who of Denver's least desirable. Outlaws, smallpox victims, vagrants, and the sort of men who died with IOUs in their boots and unfinished business in their eyes. Then, in a move that can only be described as optimistically civic-minded, city officials decided to turn the whole cemetery into a park. A rebranding exercise, if you will. Really, nothing says progress like paving over your past. But what do you do with all the bodies? Well, this is where it gets creatively unethical. In 1893, the city hired a local undertaker named E.P. McGovern to relocate the remains. His contract stipulated that each body be exhumed, placed in a new casket, and moved, respectfully, to a new cemetery. Instead, McGovern got a little grifty. He started hacking the bodies apart and separating those parts into individual coffins. Limbs were mismatched, skulls were separated from spines. He basically played operation with corpses and billed Denver by the piece. Local newspapers caught wind and called it the most revolting crime ever perpetrated in the city. McGovern obviously was fired, the project was scrapped, and hundreds of bodies, maybe thousands, were just left behind. Which brings us to Cheesman Park. a gorgeous, open expanse that gently undulates like it's trying to forget what it's built on. And it would be the perfect urban oasis, if not for the screaming. So let's talk ghosts. Park rangers have reported phantom sobbing beneath the pavilion. Joggers say they've seen spectral figures drifting between trees before vanishing into thin air. Dogs, normally fearless, have been known to whimper and refuse to cross certain sections of grass. Then there's the smell. Several Denver residents claim the air near the East Lawn occasionally reeks of decay. Not like garbage, not like sewage, but like something old, something buried and unfinished. In the dreams, dozens of people have reported eerily specific nightmares after napping in the park. Visions of shallow graves, dirt in their mouths, bodies stacked like cordwood. Some even wake up with scratches. Most just wake up and decide not to come back. There's one famous account dating back to the 1950s of a woman who lived in an apartment facing Cheesman. She swore she saw people wandering the park at all hours of the night, silent, slow-moving, with expressions like broken clocks. When she called the police, they didn't find anything, but she kept seeing them. Eventually, she moved to Chicago. Her parting words to her landlord: "Tell them I'm not coming back. Tell them." She pointed out the window. Who's them? That's a great question, but she didn't stick around to find out. You see, Cheesman Park doesn't just feel haunted. It is haunted by the negligence, by the greed, by the willful forgetting that allowed Denver to pretend it could erase its dead by laying down sod and installing a gazebo. There are still bones under the park. That's not speculation. It's a matter of public record. And as recently as the 2000s, skeletal remains have surfaced during plumbing work, during landscaping, and even after a heavy rain. Human teeth, shin bones, bits of coffin hardware. And yet, Denver continues to picnic. Because that's what cities do, isn't it? They bury what they can't fix. They rebrand. They gentrify. They put in bike lanes and hope nobody notices the unmarked grave beneath their picnic blanket. But if you do find yourself at Cheesman, stretching into a downward dog, sipping iced coffee, or just admiring the view, maybe take a moment. Notice the silence, or the sudden drop in temperature, or the pair of eyes watching you from a shadow that wasn't there a second ago. And if you hear a voice whisper your name, don't turn around. And if you hear a voice whisper your name, don't turn around. And if you hear a voice whisper your name, don't turn around. Chapter 3: The Curse of the Capitol Building. Some cities are built on compromise. Denver, apparently, was built on bones. But let's say you've made it out of Cheesman Park intact. You've shaken the mud off your shoes, you've ignored the phantom tug at your ankle, and you're still somehow craving a little civic pride. So, you head for the gleaming gold dome of the Colorado State Capitol Building. Imposing, elegant, and, depending on who you ask, completely cursed. The stories begin with the land itself. So, before the cornerstone was ever laid, this hill was sacred ground for the Cheyenne and the Arapaho. It was a place of gatherings, a place of visions, and, as some oral history suggests, a place of mourning. But progress has never been great at listening. So, in 1890, the Capitol's foundations were poured right on top of that significance, like cheap concrete over a cracked grave. From the beginning, things didn't go right. Construction delays, budget overruns, a freak series of injuries involving not one, not two, but 3 different stonemasons falling from the dome, none of whom survived, and none of whom left so much as a documented accident report. Convenient? Maybe. Ominous? Definitely. And then there's the marble. The interior walls are lined with Colorado rose onyx, a rare and apparently now extinct variant of stone that can no longer be found anywhere on Earth. During installation, workers noted the unusual warmth of the material, describing it as alive or sometimes resisting placement. Several slabs cracked on their own mid-installation, with no pressure applied. One superintendent called the stone ornery. Another called it possessed, and he resigned 2 weeks later, citing unspecified visions in his exit letter. But maybe the curse isn't in the building materials. Maybe it's in the people who pass through them. Since 1900, the capital has seen a suspicious number of scandals, suicides, and, let's call them, incidents. In the 1940s, one representative was found in his office, mumbling in Latin and drawing concentric circles on the floor with lipstick. He claimed he was trying to appease the dome. His family never spoke publicly about what happened next, so we don't know. Another staffer, a janitor named Elmer, disappeared in 1981 while cleaning the Senate chamber. His cart was found, neatly parked right near the podium. His keys were still in the ignition of his truck. His time card was punched in, but never punched out, and Elmer was never seen again. Some say you can still hear the squeak of his mop late at night, echoing through locked corridors. Now, of course, skeptics argue that every old building has its ghost stories. But not every old building causes a photo to develop with a human figure that wasn't there when the shutter clicked. Not every old building has rooms that go inexplicably cold, or hallways that bend ever so slightly when no one's looking. And not every old building hosts the stairs. Yes, the bloody steps, the Capitol's main staircase stretching from the first floor up toward the rotunda. It's polished granite and almost always immaculate, except when it's not. Multiple visitors have reported seeing faint stains, rusty red, shaped like footprints or dragging marks, that appear, flicker, and vanish as you approach. Tour guides brush it off as a trick of the light. Janitors say they've scrubbed it dozens of times only for the stains to reappear. Some believe the steps mark the site of a long-forgotten duel. Others think it's the echo of a 1920s protester who threw himself from the gallery after shouting something that no one quite heard. Personally, I think the building remembers every trespass, and sometimes it bleeds. Now, is this all just coincidence? Architectural quirks? The collective imagination of bored interns and overly caffeinated docents? Sure. And I'm sure those flickering lights are just old wiring. And that shadow in the dome is just a trick of the sun. But next time you stand on the Capitol's west steps and admire the view, where the plaque notes that you're exactly 1 mile above sea level, maybe ask yourself why Denver needed to build its seat of power right here, on a sacred hill, near a haunted park, just a stone's throw from 24 other sites of death, madness, and decay. It's almost like the city was designed to suffer. Or maybe the Capitol just makes people go a little mad. You wouldn't be the first. This has been The Devil Within, Episode 1 of our Denver series. For more stories that remind you how close horror lives to history, follow us at The Devil Within Pod. Leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. Apple, Spotify, you know the drill. Next week, we head to the old Fitzsimmons Army Hospital. Ghosts, gurneys, government secrets. Bring your own flashlight. The Devil Within is an EVO production recorded live at Bel Air Studios in Los Angeles, California. For The Devil Within, I'm your host and writer, Brandon Morgan. Until next time, stay safe out there.